to SandCity Sports, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, the Cape Cod Kid, artist formerly known as Andre King, and we're back again to bring you all the sports and current events news stories that you need to know. Let's get it started. Ladies and gentlemen, you might have heard, but once again, it's football season. Hey! 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 A number of great games last night, but I figured we'd kick it off with the Patriots. The New England Patriots defeated the Houston Texans by a score of 27-20 in a game that wasn't really as close as that score might indicate. Tom Brady threw for 277 yards and 3 touchdowns, while the Patriots defense held Deshaun Watson to 176 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception on 17 for 34 passing. Around the world of sports today, many people praised the Patriots' performance and boldly declared that New England remains the favorite to make the Super Bowl at the end of this season. Folks, I find it quite interesting that the New England Patriots have returned to being the gold standard of football so quickly. Not so long ago, we had marquee players skipping OTAs, coaches trading away high-value prospects for a bag of chichi beans, owners dividing up their time between important social justice initiatives and personal leisure excursions, and most importantly, numerous injuries, retirements, and question marks at key positions. Oh, what a difference a day makes. Now, all of a sudden, all is right in Tinseltown. The Patriots are the dominant, overwhelming favorites that they've always been, and nary is there a doubter to be found. That's all good and well. But there was another game played yesterday in Minnesota with a player who was quite important last year in New England. And he happened to throw for 261 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, completing less than half of his 33 attempts. Once again, I find it somewhat amusing that only a short time ago there was considerable concern about a 41-year-old quarterback and his prospects going into the future versus a dashing, charismatic 26-year-old quarterback who was going to lead a new generation of NFL passers. Well, folks, after one game, the 41-year-old doesn't appear to be going anywhere, and the 26-year-old might be fighting for his job by midseason. Next up, there was a game in Chi-Town that you all might have heard about, where we saw dominance by 2 players in 2 halves that was undoubtedly historic. So Khalil Mack used to play for a team in California that cultivated a bad boy image. But apparently, this man was too bad for a team that cultivated a renegade image. So they decided to ship this man off to Chicago. Shout out to Bernie Mac. Always think of the late great anytime Chi City comes into the conversation. But this man, Khalil Mack, 1 assisted sack, 1 sack, 1 interception, and 1 tub. Complete, utter, and absolute domination that was only overshadowed by a possibly season-ending injury to Mr. Aaron Rodgers. So, Aaron Rodgers got paid. I don't know if you heard. And a good part of the reason he got paid, at least in my mind, is the man's stash game is on point. Man has a strong, or kept a strong mustache in the offseason. Very important. But Aaron Rodgers also got paid because he is believed by many to be the best quarterback in the NFL. And so when he goes down in the first half with a possible season-ending knee injury, the entire NFL community rightfully takes notice. By this time, you all know the story. Rodgers returns for the second half, throws for 286 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and leads the Packers back for a 24-23 win over the Chicago Bears. The only question that I have is what many others have raised, is that during the second half, Aaron Rodgers was sacked 0 times and hurried 0 times, as the Chicago Bears interestingly and ineffectively shifted their defensive strategy. Also, Khalil Mack ended up playing in less than 60 plays, which was another example of a player who skipped the preseason and had fatigue issues to begin the regular season. We're going to stay in the Midwest as the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Cleveland to face off against the Browns. First off, the game ended in a tie. As Hugh Jackson said, a tie. I didn't know professional games were allowed to have this result. I'm not sure of any professional enterprise, especially one of the magnitude of the National Football League, that would allow a tie to be an accepted conclusion. Nonetheless, this game saw some dominant performances that were on par with any achievement in any other game to kick off the season. First off, James Conner amassed 192 total yards and 2 touchdowns in his first NFL game as the feature running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Conner entered the field with a hairstyle that raised some eyebrows and caught a number of people's attention. But those of us whose film lexicon spans a few decades can understand the inspiration for such a style to kick off a new season, and the level of mastery that this style speaks to and demands. Folks, it was certainly only one game that we're looking at, but James Conner was a Wudon warrior for all 60 minutes of that game. Within this game, certainly, there was a lot of talk surrounding Tyrod Taylor and his performance, throwing for 197 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception on only 15 for 40 passing. But folks, we also have to remember that even though Ben Roethlisberger threw for 335 yards, he also threw 3 interceptions and was only 23 for 41 passing the football. The fact of the matter is, the elements and the torrential downpour was the elephant in the room, and both teams, particularly on the offensive side, will be much more accurate and potent going forward. And we'd be remiss in talking about the Steelers if we didn't mention the Le'Veon Bell holdout. Bell forfeited $853,000 after missing the Steelers' first game. And many of Bell's teammates questioned both his commitment to the Steelers as well as his commitment to the game. On this point, folks, I'd simply like to ask all of you, if your boss came in one day and said, you know what, you do a great job, you're important for our organization, but we're only going to pay you half, or maybe a quarter of what you're worth. And that's just the way it's going to be. First of all, how many of you would continue working for that company if you could get equal or better wages someplace else? And secondly, how many of you would give a rat's ass what your coworkers thought if this was the unfortunate predicament that you found yourself in? Kicking it over to the NBA, the Hall of Fame inducted 13 new members, among them Steve Nash, Grant Hill, Jason Kidd, and Ray Allen. This class included some of the best floor generals, shooters, and all-around players in our game's rich and storied history, along with some of our best ambassadors and humanitarians, individuals whose impact off the court certainly rivaled their production on it. Also in the NBA, star Phoenix Suns guard Devin Booker will require surgery on his right hand and be out indefinitely, and certainly for the start of the NBA season. This story was notable because Booker recently signed a 5-year, $158 million contract, making him the highest paid player in Phoenix Suns history, yet now has become even more notable based on the reporting of Barstool Sports, where it is shown that Booker was on Instagram riding his bicycle with no hands only a short time before it was reported he would need surgery and be out for an indefinite period of time. In championship tennis competition, the U.S. Open final between Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka was marred by an unfortunate and unmerited penalty by the umpire at a decisive point during the second set. Williams, down 3-4 at the time, was assessed a third and game penalty by umpire Carlos Ramos, giving Naomi Osaka a 5-3 lead at a decisive point in the second set. The International Tennis Federation has stated, Carlos Ramos is one of the most experienced and respected umpires in tennis. Mr. Ramos' decisions were in accordance with the relevant rules and were reaffirmed by the Open's decision to fine Serena Williams for the 3 offenses. That there is a nice lawyered up way for the International Tennis Federation to try to hide that their official destroyed one of the most important tennis matches of their entire season. As an official myself, I recognize quite fully and with all seriousness that tens, hundreds, and thousands of people do not show up to an athletic event to see me or another umpire run around in a zebra suit. People show up at athletic events to see a ball game, and that is precisely what they were deprived of in the U.S. Open. A couple quick hits to conclude our show. We want to give a shout out to Novak Djokovic on capturing the U.S. Open men's title. The championship is Novak's 14th and ties him with Pete Sampras for 3rd on the all-time list. Also want to give a shout out to Ryan Fitzpatrick. He went 21 for 28 from the field for 417 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a QBR of 97.1. This was quite surprising to many, but those of us in the beard community recognize that a significant component of this standout performance relates to the strength and dynamism of his beard, which is definitely in at least year 2, if not approaching a 3rd year. And finally, have to give a shout out to Joe Flacco on passing for 236 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions on 25 for 34 passing, and an 85.3 QBR. Flacco was owned in only 4.1% of fantasy leagues and only started in 0.08. Possibly a big acquisition there. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for tuning in to SandCity Sports. Go ahead and like the page if you're so inclined. Definitely comment as you feel the need, very important, and subscribe to our page if that's what makes you feel right. Once again, I am the Cape Cod Kid, artist formerly known as Andre King, and we're going to keep bringing you all the sports and current events news stories that you need to know.
Yes, we piece of souls do sedate ourselves. Just a number's pain we feel. Yes, at times we do hate ourselves, but each day we try to retake ourselves. So yes, we piece of souls do sedate ourselves. Just a number's pain we feel. Yes, at times we do hate ourselves, but each day we try to embrace ourselves. Yeah.